Who has the right-of-way in every situation? Who moves first on the road? Part 2. The significance of giving way to pedestrians. At crosswalks and on the sidewalk, drivers must give way to pedestrians. In actuality, even if they are occupying an area you wish to drive on and the right-of-way should be yours, you should always yield to a pedestrian if it is practically possible. Pedestrians almost invariably get injuries or pass away in collisions with moving automobiles. Drivers must exercise caution and maintain vigilance when passing pedestrians. In right-of-way for pedestrians, you will discover how and when you must give way to the most vulnerable users of the highway transportation system. At pedestrian crosswalks, always yield. Drivers are required to yield to any pedestrian waiting to cross the road at the edge of a crosswalk, unless the crosswalk is illuminated by traffic lights. Even if the light is green, you must stop whenever a pedestrian is using the crossing and wait until they have fully exited the street before moving forward. A don't walk signal is in effect, however keep in mind that many people disregard the correct right-of-way laws and may dart into a crosswalk. When a pedestrian fails to yield, it is the driver's responsibility to do so. In much of the United States, the laws determining who has the right-of-way at pedestrian crosswalks are similar. All drivers must comprehend and abide by these traffic laws because pedestrian lives depend on it. Right-of-way on mountains and hills. All public roads, including isolated mountain roads, are subject to the same fundamental right-of-way legislation. However, confrontation between vehicles going in opposing directions is more possible than on other highways in mountainous places due to the steep hills and small lanes. There must be some additional right-of-way regulations as a result. The driver facing downhill is required to give way to the driver facing uphill whenever two vehicles going in opposing directions collide on a steep incline. Right-of-way on mountain roads examines the rationale behind this regulation and instructs you on how to safely yield when confronted by opposing traffic on a steep, congested road. School buses have the right-of-way. Strict right-of-way regulations protect school buses in almost every state in order to protect the most vulnerable members of our society. Drivers in both directions are required to yield whenever a school bus stops by the side of the road to pick up or drop off children by coming to a complete stop and maintaining a safe distance until the school bus has resumed its course. Each state has its own right-of-way law, with some minor variations in the finer points. You can find general information in this section, right-of-way for school buses, but you should also familiarize yourself with the law and your state's official driver's manual. Emergency vehicles have the right-of-way. Emergency vehicles are subject to a distinct set of right-of-way laws than ordinary road users when they have active flashing lights and or warning sirens. Drivers of emergency vehicles are required to follow all traffic laws when these warning elements are not engaged. Police cars, fire engines, ambulances, and other emergency vehicles may use flashing lights and sirens while they are reacting to an incident. The emergency response vehicle's driver ought to have priority over all other road users in this scenario. Always make space for moving emergency vehicles. Of course, when everyone on the road must yield at once, giving up the right-of-way is not always simple. When an emergency vehicle is approaching, you must know how to yield safely and effectively since other people's lives could be of danger. Crossing rights at railroad crossings. At every railroad grade crossing, drivers are required to yield the right-of-way to approaching trains. Since trains are physically unable to yield and have the ability to crush the average passenger vehicle like a car would a soda can, there can be no exceptions to this right-of-way law. Even if you believe you can get to the other side in time, you must yield to the incoming train and wait for it to pass. It's against the law and extremely risky to take the right-of-way away from a train. Every year, accidents involving negligent drivers near railroad crossings result in hundreds of fatalities. The sort of crossing you are dealing with, whether it is managed by active signals, and a number of other considerations will determine how and when you should surrender. Drivers must constantly perform a visual search for trains, even if warning devices show that none are approaching, so keep that in mind. Never take a chance when crossing a train.